What's going on? You listen to King Cam Ujumbe podcast, and Ujumbe means message. And today's message is religious tension, political chaos, and the birth of modern Ethiopia. Ethiopia. Yeah, you heard me right. Religious tension, political chaos, and the birth of modern Ethiopia. Yeah, get you something to write on, something to write with, and we're about to get into it. I hope all is well with you. And yeah, this is going to be interesting. This is going to be great. I really appreciate the fam for weighing in and sharing their thoughts on our discussion on Ethiopia. Yeah, we're still on the book, The Ethiopians. We're almost done. The Ethiopians: A History by Richard Pankhurst. We're almost done. I think we got one more chapter to go, and that's a wrap. But yeah, we're we're pushing through. We're getting this information in. So yeah, we talking about Iyasu and Zewditu, the crisis, compromise, and the struggle for direction in the between 1913 and 1928. This is a pivotal era. This is a pivotal time in modern Ethiopia. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot. It's so many twists and turns in the last century alone. But yeah, yeah. So yeah, this is part two of our little series, the birth of modern Ethiopia miniseries, Menelik Iyasu Zewditu, and Haile Selassie. So this is the new Ethiopian era. This is the new time. We're now in the 20th century with it, right? So I'd like to welcome you all back to the King Cam Ujumbe podcast. And we are continuing our journey through one of the most critical periods in Ethiopian history. In part one, last week, we walked with Menelik towards the end of his life as he transformed Ethiopia from a medieval kingdom into a modern empire. Yeah, we're gonna talk about him. We talked about him last week, and then we stood at the Battle of Adwa in 1896 and witnessed the only African nation to defeat a European colonial power in open battle, not by finesse, not by paperwork. They actually went on the battlefield to throw hands. What's going on, brother Isu from One Voice Africa? Shout out to the fam. Hit the like button and greet everybody as you come in. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Greetings. Yeah, shoot, this I really appreciate. He is one of our esteemed members. Okay, of the Ujumbe fam. He is one of our esteemed members. Shout out to him, and this is gonna be good. Yeah, it's gonna be good. So greetings, everybody. Hit the like button and greet everybody as you come in. But yeah, so today we're gonna ask the question: can a nation modernize without shared agreement on identity? Can you still be yourself? And who actually grants legitimacy? See, the thing is, we as a people, we are always trying to pursue legitimacy or pursue some kind of affirmation from external sources. See what I'm saying? And that's not how it goes, right? Uh, is the legitimacy through visionaries, institutions, or is it through the people? And is stability a form of leadership, or merely the absence of change? Okay, because sometimes some people feel like no change is good as long as everything stay the same. No, if you're trying to evolve as a people, as a nation, you got to change, right? And so, how do you transform an ancient civilization without destroying its soul? Yeah, yeah, because if you lose your soul, if you lose the culture, you lose the war, right? So, um, we discussed Menelik. We discussed Menelik last week and how he built the French railroad from Djibouti to Addis Ababa, and saw how iron rails carried not just goods but ideas and concepts, modernization, bureaucracy, diplomacy, and even education. We watched King Menelik navigate the triple pressures of internal reform, external aggression, and elite resistance. And we learned last week the first principle of, say, the hidden code. We're going to get into that later. And then we thought about how can we modernize our nation without being westernized, right? Transformation without annihilation. So Menelik didn't destroy the old order, but he built a new one. He partnered with it. He brought nobility into his vision. He honored the church while modernizing the state. He built consciousness, or before he built railroads. But what happens when the next generation doesn't follow that idea? What happens, right? So what happens when the people do not follow that code? And what happens when, say, change moves faster than tradition? So this is where we are, right? This is where we are. Okay. So we're going to talk about Iyasu and Zewditu. So the birth of modern Ethiopian miniseries, Menelik, we talked about the architect of New Ethiopia. Now we're on Iyasu, the interrupted transformation, Empress Zewditu as well. And we're going to touch on the rise of Haile Selassie. And there's been some conversation about him. The legitimacy of his rulership. We love Haile Selassie, but I've learned that almost every leader that assumed the throne or some kind of rulership in Ethiopia would lay claim to the Solomonic dynasty. You see what I'm saying? Who has that direct line, a bloodline, right? And so we're going to talk about the limits of modernization and the seeds of future conflict and a little bit of esoteric knowledge, right? So today, here, get you something to write on, something to write with, get you some popcorn, something to drink, whatever. We're going to get into it. So today, we're going to talk about after King Menelik, the power without a map. Lij Iyasu, the uncrowned emperor, because he by right was emperor, but he was not officially crowned as such, right? Then we're going to deal with the breaking point, church nobility and foreign pressure, the fall, flight, and erasure, the tragedy of Lij Iyasu, the Empress Zewditu, the strategic pause and dual power, and the making of Haile Selassie. All right. So this is the story. This is where we are, right? In this story, we're going to talk about Lij Iyasu, the leader who tried to unite Muslims and Christians. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes, right? Under the Ethiopian crown, even though we know for centuries Muslims and Christians in Ethiopia coexisted, but he was trying to make it official. How would that play out, right? And also, we're gonna discuss Empress Zewditu, the devout Orthodox ruler who held the throne, so modernization could be built around it, right? And then we're going to deal with Ras Tafari Mechanin, the patient strategist who learned to govern from inside the system before transforming it entirely. So we're going to go from 1913 to 1928. But can modernization exist without consensus, without yielding to external pressure? All right. So yeah, we're still on Ethiopia Cushion Kemet. And shout out to some of the fam. They really appreciate how we are doing deep dives on East Africa. Mr. Gales, we had an interview with him last year. Mr. Gales, I talked to him today. He said, bro, if you really want to learn something about East Africa, check out King Cam and Ujumbe podcast. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. And so today we're going to talk about pillar number 1, Ethiopia, the source of sanctuary. Pillar number 2, Kemet, the blueprint of sacred civilization. Pillar 3, Cushy Nubia, the corridor continuity. I got something for that, though. And pillar 4, the hidden code, spiritual science, symbols, and esoteric legacy of Africa. So we're hanging out in pillar number 1 for a few more weeks. And we got something else coming up. It's going to be fun. You're going to love it. So here's the thing. Let's get to it. So we're going to talk about crisis compromise and Ethiopia's struggle. After Menelik, the power without a map, right? So when Menelik suffered his first stroke in 1906, the question of secession became real. It became urgent. Who's going to be next? Who's going to lead next? He had no surviving heir directly. His children with Empress Zewditu died young. Okay, his other children born from earlier marriages were not considered legitimate contenders by the Shiwan nobility. And I forgot about this. Shout out to the fam. I mentioned that Emperor Menelik, he coined his own money, and that was in heavy circulation. I forgot about the money of ancient Axum. Shout out to the fam that gave me that correction. Ancient Axum coined their own money too. All right. Yeah. Like the boy said, he had his own money, right? So what happened is the emperor is fading. His other children were born from earlier marriages. According to the Ethiopian church and nobility, they weren't legit. Okay, they weren't legit contenders. And so Menelik looked to his grandson, right? Lij Iyasu. Okay, born in 1895, the son of Ras Makael Wolo, the son of Ras Makael of Wolo. Grandson, he was the grandson of Emperor Menelik, but it was through his mother. Okay, we're gonna get into that in a second. It's through his mother, Wazero Shawega, and not Taitu. Yeah, we said he had some children and so on, but they were not from the empress. So in May 15, 1909, Menelik made it official. He told his ministers that Iyasu would be the next emperor. He would be next. But here's the thing. Here's something that's crucial to understand. Iyasu didn't inherit the throne. He inherited a web of political tension. He basically inherited a lot of problems, right? So let me talk about it. Let me explain. So the bloodline, why friction was inevitable. Why friction was inevitable. Right, shout out to the fam. Everybody's greeting everybody. I really appreciate that. Yeah. What's going on? Jadamini Williams, what's going on? Yeah. So why the bloodline was an issue. See, here's the thing. Iyasu's father, Ras Makael, governor of Wollo, and one of Menelik's, he was one of his loyal allies. His father was actually born Muhammad Ali. He was a Muslim. He was a Muslim until 1875. Okay. He was a Muslim. His father was a Muslim. Okay, let me break it down. Iyasu's father, okay, Ras Makael, was born Muslim in a Christian Orthodox nation. To rule and lead, that was kind of taboo, right? And so he was a Muslim until 1875. Then Emperor Johannes IV ordered him to convert to Christianity. So he converted, right? He became a Christian noble. He married into Menelik's family. And so, but this is what I learned about it. There was some things between Johannes IV and Makael that we may have to discuss. Let me know if you want me to discuss that, because Makael had some things that he had to deal with. He had to endure as he rose into prominence. Like and comment below. Let me know if you guys want me to talk about Ras Makael. All right, let's get it. So he converted, became a Christian noble, married. He married into Menelik's family. Okay, but you know, the Shiwan Orthodox people, they didn't forget about that. They didn't forget about his Muslim origins. Yeah, you may be married into this thing, but I don't know about you, boy. I don't know about you. So now Iyasu's mother was Zero Shiwariga who was Menelik's daughter. They got married. Okay, so we have Makael and Waziro. They got married. But here's the issue. There's a complication. She was not Taitu's daughter. Yeah. Because remember, Taitu was the one that actually held it down, that actually was politically astute and militarily astute. She was not Empress Taitu's daughter. Okay. He said, Wello region is heavily influenced by Islam. Oh, okay. So Muhammad Ali was basically born into this thing, right? So he was from that region where a lot of Muslims were. Okay, much love to the family. Really appreciate it. Yeah. And so get this. That's not Taitu's daughter. And so his second wife was Menelik's second wife was Bafina Wolde Makael. So she was different, and she wasn't just any kind of woman. She was ambitious, intelligent, politically skilled, and she was dangerous. Okay. Menelik's second wife, Bafina, was dangerous. She because in Get this, in 1877, while Menelik was still king of Shewa, Bafina led a failed coup against him. His second wife was trying to dethrone him. Yeah, yeah. There was some friction. That was the reason why there was some issues. Okay, Menelik's second wife was trying to take him out. Yeah. So she conspired with nobles. She tried to replace Menelik with a puppet king. The coup failed. Bafina's power was broken. And some sources say she was killed later on. We don't know for sure. We don't know. Others say she lived in obscurity, but Menelik survived and he remembered all that. And so get this. Okay. This is Michael, by the way. And so, but get this though. Taitu, she didn't forget. Okay, so when Bafina's daughter Soringa tried to marry Ras Michaela Wollo from a Muslim nation or Muslim area, and then their son was born, Empress remembered that. Taitu looked at Iyasu and saw a child of somebody who tried to kill her husband. Yeah, the grandson of a woman who tried to kill her husband. Yeah, she wasn't going for that. She wasn't going for that. And so this is the son of a Muslim-born convert, a threat to Shiwan Orthodox dominance. So Taitu began building alliances against Iyasu before he even took power. She was a strategist on the battlefield as well as Ethiopian court. So she arranged political marriages between her relatives and key Shiwan aristocrats. She positioned her allies in strategic areas and governorship. So she made sure that the nobility, the people of nobility understood that Iyasu was not like them and not one of them. Yeah. 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 So she made sure that. She made sure that key people were in place. Think about it. She remembered a failed attempt on her husband's life. She held it down. She kept it together. And then here come the grandson of this other lady. Nah. So, but here's another thing though. Here's another connection. Johannes IV connection. Okay, that's the other layer. Emperor Johannes IV, who died in battle in 1849, we talked about that, was the grandfather of Ras Michael. That's his grandson. Oh my goodness. So Johannes IV, grandson, Ras Michael of Wollo, is now married into Menelik's family, whose son is trying to ascend to power, Iyasu. And so, but there's a lot that go into that between the connection of Johannes and Ras Michael. Y'all let me know if you guys want me to have that discussion about that connection. But we're going to discuss that another day. But Johannes had been Menelik's rival for the imperial throne for a long time, because the backstory is Johannes' camp, they basically kidnapped Menelik. Yeah, these folk had problems. Johannes IV, his people, either he kidnapped, he either did it himself or had Menelik kidnapped. This was a real rivalry, Game of Thrones type stuff. The two men had even fought each other in 1877 before reconciling later on. So Iyasu's family carried ties to both competing dynasties. Menelik's line through his mother, Johannes' line through his father. And so, and to complicate this, to make it even worse, Ras Michael was also the grandfather of Empress Menen. Yeah. He was the grandfather of Empress Menen, the future wife of Haile Selassie, which means, shoot, y'all are real brilliant, y'all real smart, y'all can help me out. This means that they cousins. Haile Selassie and Iyasu were cousins. Both had claims to the throne. Both had supporters. Both represented different visions for Ethiopia's future. This wasn't just a direct line of succession. This is a web of connections here. This wasn't about just which lineage and which vision would just define the empire. This was about families interconnected one way or the other. So, yeah, they was cousins. This is a picture of them together, standing next to each other. That's on the right. That is Haile Selassie, Ras Tafari, Mekanin. And then we have Lij Iyasu on the left with the sword in his hand. Both are of nobility. Both by right, one way or the other, have the right to the throne of Ethiopia. Through marriage or whatever, right? So there was an impossible mission. He was in a weird spot, y'all. A lot of hindsight is 2020, and we look at the past like he should have did this, he should have did that. But so think about it. When he took power in 1913, he inherited a modernizing empire built by Menelik, but he also inherited a fraction nobility suspicious of his lineage. Remember, both sides of his family, they came into power kind of different, right? So an Orthodox church that feared his Muslim-born father. They feel like, okay, once a Muslim, always a Muslim kind of thing, right? And then get this. Oh, before I get into that, we forgot this. If you want to learn more about Ethiopia, Kush, and Kemet, hit the like button and subscribe. Let's get to it. If you're enjoying this. So, I forgot this. Check this out. European powers were watching. They were watching things unfold. They was watching weaknesses. They was trying to find a crack in Ethiopia's armor, and they think they found it through the line of succession. Right, regional governors with independent power bases, and a country that had just begun tasting modernity, but hadn't yet decided what kind of nation it wanted to be. Iyasu was young. He was 18 years old. He was brilliant, ambitious, a visionary, but he also was impulsive, just like we all are. How many people at 18 was wise beyond their years? Like and comment below. How many people was wise and full of wisdom and everything at 18? And you had all this power. And think about it like this. Some of our college athletes, okay, that come into college, into say the NCAA, they go to the Division I schools and run. They're the quarterback or got a full scholarship and money. They have never seen this much money before. Never seen them got this much attention before. Now they have it. How do you think they'll respond? So same thing here. He was brilliant, but he was also impulsive, inexperienced, and he was surrounded by enemies. The walls was closing in on him. He didn't know who to trust. Yeah, this stage is set. It's set for tragedy. So we talked a little bit about after Menelik, the power without a map. Lij Iyasu, we're about to get into that. The breaking point. We're going to talk about that in a minute because the church got involved. Yeah, we're going to talk about the fall, flight, and erasure, the tragedy of Lij Iyasu, Empress Zewditu, and dual powers, right? Let's go. The stage is set. So now we got to deal with his vision of inclusivity. He had a vision from the very beginning. Iyasu showed that he was different. He continued Menelik's modernization program. He established Ethiopia's first police force in Addis Ababa. He appointed ministers, which is cool. He centralized certain authorities, which is great. But here's the problem. This is the thing that set him apart, okay? His openness to diverse communities, especially Muslims. That rubbed some people the wrong way, y'all. Iyasu, and then he married multiple wives. Many of them were Muslim. It kind of reminds him of the Solomon effect, where Solomon had a whole bunch of wives and a whole lot of concubines. Right? Then he built mosques. He spent time in Muslim communities in Harar, Dawa, the Somali regions. He appointed Muslims to government positions. Now think about I understand what he's attempting to do, try to include everybody, but politically, the nobles wasn't having it. Okay, because Ethiopia had been Christian for Christian empire for over 1,500 years. Now, mind you, yeah, there was Muslims there was Jews there, but they were exclusively, Christian. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tawahedo Church was the spine of the state. Now, keep in mind that they were still closely connected to the Coptic Church in Egypt, but they were still the connection of that nation. Christianity was Ethiopia's identity. But Iyasu looked at Ethiopia's borders and saw a large Muslim population in the east, Harar, Ogaden, Somali regions. He saw Muslim neighbors surrounding Ethiopia. We got Sudan, Somalia, Djibouti, a world where Islam and Christianity was colliding. And then we got World War I. This is at the dawn of World War I. And then you got the Ottoman Empire and European colonialism. What would you have done? What would you have done if all of these factors was in play? Would you have just kept it cool, or would you have tried to make some adjustments? See what I'm saying? And so he had to ask that question. What if Ethiopia could build a bridge between, say, the Muslim nations and the Christian nations? Okay, remember, there was a Christian empire for 1,500 years, and the leaders, almost every emperor were Christian, right? There was some that were Muslim and so on, but not as many, right? And so what if he could unite the Christians with the Muslims under one Ethiopian crown? Could it be done? Yeah, this wasn't progressive. This was kind of like a revolutionary idea. So this was 1913, decades before the United Nations, before post-colonial nation building, before the language of pluralism even existed. Iyasu imagined a multi-religious Ethiopia. He saw Muslims and Christians not as enemies, but as fellow Ethiopians. Pan-African kind of thing. Okay, going beyond religion, putting the religion idea to the back burner and unite as a people. Right? He saw Ethiopia was not as they say Christian fortress, but a pan-horn power that can unify diverse people. This was different. This was brilliant, but it was dangerous. It was dangerous. Here's why. There was some backlash. People panicked. He's trying to change up the status quo. He's trying to do something different. They said, I don't know about that. It's messing up my situation. The Shiwa nobility looked at Iyasu's reform and panicked. The Orthodox Church looked at his mosque and saw apostasy. He's flip-flopping. European powers looked at his Muslim alliances and saw instability. Why was that though? Why did the elites saw this as instability, and why did some people saw it as apostasy? Possibly maybe because he wasn't just promoting tolerance, right? He was challenging the structure, the actual structure of Ethiopian identity. I told you, when you lose the culture, you lose the war. So he is actually trying to break some of the very foundations of Ethiopian identity. And yeah, they weren't having it, right? Because think about it, for 1,500 years of being Ethiopian meant being part of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. The church crowned the emperors. The church legitimized the power. The church was the ideological foundation of the state. No Christian, no Ethiopia. They was together. There's like part of their DNA, right? So if Iyasu succeeded in creating a multi-religious Ethiopia, what would happen to the church's authority? Yeah, what would happen to their power by giving it to some other people that don't believe the same way they do or don't move the same way they do? Yeah, he's kind of interrupting the status quo a little bit. Think about if Iyasu succeeded in creating that, what if Muslims could be equally Ethiopian, and what would happen to the Orthodox dominance? If the emperor didn't need the church's blessing, what would happen to the church's power? The nobility feared losing control. Yeah, it was fear. They feared change. They feared ideological change. They feared political change. Even though Iyasu was kind of bringing forward Emperor Menelik II's ideas, but the nobles didn't like that. But that's how it goes sometimes. Even though the populace is cool with the old leader and they're rolling with it, they're supporting him, but let a new leader kind of do the same thing that the older leader is doing, nobody likes it. Yeah. It's strange. It's strange behavior. Right? So the nobility feared losing control, the church feared losing relevance, and then World War I has started. So now we're at the dawn of the quote unquote Great War. Then here's another problem. I love the guy, but he keeps messing up. The Ottoman connection, that's a fatal mistake. During World War I, the European powers divided into two camps, right? The Allies, that's Britain, France, Russia, and Italy. Then the Central Powers. This is before the United States got involved. The Central Powers, that is Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire. Ethiopia, at this time, was surrounded by British, French, and Italian colonies. The smart move would have to stay neutral, just leave everybody alone, right? Or maybe lean towards the allies. But Iyasu didn't do that. He began communicating with the Ottoman Empire and Germany. Sometimes it's good to not say nothing, right? But and that's what I've been noticing sometimes with a lot of our Ethiopian leaders. In times of change and challenge and maybe crisis, they would send communication out to a European nation as if that was going to help them just off the sheer fact of goodwill. No. He reached out to the Ottoman Empire and Germany. Remember, we'll talk about that in a second, but he tried to incite a rebellion among the Muslim communities in British Sudan. So he tried to trigger a little friction among the Muslim communities in British Sudan. You should have stayed neutral, bro. You should have stayed neutral. But he started triggering some skirmishes in Sudan and Somalia. So he positioned himself as a potential ally to, say, Germany, Austria, and the Ottoman Empire. But get this, remember though, in the 1500s, during the Red Sea battles, the imams of Ethiopia were connected with the Ottoman Empire. See what I'm saying? So we're seeing this same similar cycle right now in the 20th century. But, if you want to know more about that, if you're interested, check out the video a little bit later, The Secret Battle for the Red Sea. But why would he do that? Why would he do that? Okay, I see the family. Hold on. Let me see. The family in the chat chatting. Is it Dami Williams said the direct line thing is just Italian info war, divided and rule. Yeah, divide and conquer for sure. Sister Linda, good evening. She said, good evening, King Cam and viewers. Sorry. No, you didn't miss anything. It's late. It's okay. Yeah. Iyasu said he miscalculated the power of the church. The same Sisonios in Gundarian period. Yeah. There was some issues with Gondar too. Yeah, we're learning a lot, y'all. We came a long way, y'all. The ruling nobles would have been overrun by other nobles. Yeah, we've seen that with the era of princes, where everybody was fighting everybody, right? Yeah. Oh, he said, shout out to Brother Mo. So greetings, everyone. I've been listening, but just left volleyball practice with baby girl. Awesome. And shout out to Brother Mo. He did pass his test, and we're just looking forward to the day he actually announces his promotion and all the things. Boom. But yeah, so yeah, the Ottoman connection. He tried to reconnect with the old Ottoman Empire because he saw the Ottomans as a Muslim power that could balance the European. He was trying to offset this heat, this pressure. Kind of understand. The British and Italians was all around him. Yeah. But what do you think? What would you have done? Would you have asked for help, or would you have stayed neutral? Like and comment below. Help or neutral, right? Because he saw pan-Islamic solidarity to unite Ethiopia's Muslim regions, and because he thought he could play European powers against each other the other way Menelik had done, the same similar way Menelik had done. But the thing is, Menelik had his wife Zewditu, though. He does not have a Zewditu. That's the difference. That's the difference. You tried to do the heck. You tried to move and maneuver. You can't do it. Not without that visionary. You need somebody in your corner as a visionary to do that, right? So, but this was his miscalculation, as the fan was saying. This was his miscalculation. The British saw him as a threat to their Sudanese and Somali colonies. France saw him as unreliable. Italy saw him as an opportunity to destabilize Ethiopia. Why? Because they lost the fight before. So they're looking for any reason to jump in, right? And the Shiwa nobility saw him as a traitor. Yeah. It's wild. Yeah, it's wild. Yeah. Ethiopia would have been invaded even quickly by the European. Yeah, they would have. But so everything was happening. The British was against them. The French was against them. Italy was against them, and the Shiwa nobility. So by 1916, the conspiracy against Iyasu was complete. The Shiwa nobility, led by Fatawari Habit Girojis Dingadi, assembled a group of Shiwa nobles in Addis Ababa and formally made charges against Iyasu. What was the charges? It was apostasy for sure. Okay. It was apostasy for sure. And conversion to Islam, unproven, but why they believed, they thought they really believed, because his father was Muslim, he would be too. Erratic behavior, lavish lifestyle, multiple wives, especially Muslim, because keep in mind, Menelik the second had 4 wives. See what I'm saying? But his reputation made things a little different. And so threatening Ethiopia's Christian identity. So now, here's what's important to understand. Here's what's important to realize. The charges were political and not really theological. They was all political. The charges were political. There's no definitive evidence that Iyasu actually converted to Islam or went to a Hajj or prayed 3 times a day and that kind of thing. What's clear, though, what is clear is that he acted like Islam and Christianity were equally legitimate in Ethiopia. That was the issue. And so for the Ethiopian Orthodox establishment, they can't do that. They can't do that. And so there was a breaking point. All right. So check this out. Okay. We talked about after Menelik. We talked about Lij Iyasu. Now we're going to get into the breaking point. The church nobility and foreign pressure. We're going to get into that. Now, the breaking point, church nobility, and foreign pressure. But before I get into that, I got a question. Before we get into that, got a question. Would you wake up to temple drums, or would you rather wake up to priests chanting outside your door? Especially, like and comment below. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not a morning person. Let me know. Would you rather wake up to temple drums right outside next to you, or a priest chanting outside your door? Like and comment below. Drums or priests? Let me know. All right. So the breaking point. All right. Now, in September 27, 1916, while Iyasu was in Harar, a Muslim area, the Shiwa nobility struck. Okay, get this. The Coptic Archbishop Abuna Matiwos, after some hesitation, was convinced to release the nobility from their oath of loyalty to Iyasu, because the nobles up until that time were bound to be loyal to whoever was emperor of Ethiopia. But let's not forget that this was a Coptic church situation. So, in order for this to be legitimate in the eyes of the church, Iyasu was declared deposed from the throne, even though he's still in it. But he was declared officially removed from the throne, and he was excommunicated from the church. Like who's seen John Wick, the movie John Wick? He was excommunicado. He was excommunicated from the church. So the assembly of nobles then named Zewditu Menelik. She was named ruler. That is Menelik's daughter, Iyasu's aunt, and they named his aunt as Empress of Ethiopia. That is wild. How would you feel when somebody remove you from your position, your high paying position or your spot, and give it to a relative? But when I think about it, think about some of our aunts and some of our relatives that we really love and respect, and to be put in that situation, to be removed, and then, man, how would you feel about that? Have your aunt and somebody take your position. Now, and then not only that, his cousin, Haile Selassie, the Ras Tafari Mekanin, was elevated to the title of Ras, or Lord. And then he was made heir to the throne. So we have Zewditu up next, then Haile Selassie up next after they removed him. Man. Yeah. But people say, would you rather wake up to drums or priests? People saying priests. Yeah. And the thing is, I'm a drummer, and I do not want to hear drums at 6 a.m. Hey, no, not at all. No. But yeah. So he didn't go out quietly. Okay. He didn't. Man, this is crazy. His aunt and his cousin are now in position to take the throne. But he didn't go out quietly. He didn't do that. He sent an army to attack Addis Ababa. But his army was defeated at the Battle of Mieso. And it gets worse. His father had to make a decision to either be loyal to his son or loyal to the empire. Man, he couldn't take a break. Cousin about to be up next. Aunt just took the throne. He retaliated. Now his father is the one that's supposed to take him down. This is wild, y'all. Oh, okay. The family's talking. So, so the Jadamni Williams is saying this: Iyasu was never officially oiled and crowned King of Kings, Kebra Nagas or Nagusu, Nagasa Nagas. And that's probably another reason why there's so much friction here. He was not officially anointed as king. So they got somebody else. But yeah, his father had to take him down. So eventually, Mikael marched south from Desi with 80,000 troops. And this is all happening at the same time as World War I, y'all. There was battles happening inside of Ethiopia during World War I. So on October 27, 1916, the Battle of Sigali, Ras Mikael's army was defeated and Iyasu fled. Yeah, he fled. And so now we have his fall, the flight, and erasure. He was hiding for 5 years. He was a fugitive for 5 years. Lij Iyasu moved through the northern highlands, Tigray, Wollo, the far lowlands. He was a fugitive on the run, but he was also Menelek's grandson. And the people remembered that, right? They remembered the great Menelik II, right? And so they remembered his victories. They remembered his Menelek's generosity. They remembered that this young man had been designated as the rightful emperor. So the people protected him. Some nobles hid him in their homes. Priests sheltered him in monasteries. Ordinary people refused to betray him. For 5 years, the Shiwan government could not capture him. It was not because they couldn't find him. It was because the people wouldn't let him go. People wouldn't give him up. But he was eventually captured. Fam. In 1921, Iyasu was finally captured by Jajmak Gusa Araya, right? The grandson of, ironically, the grandson of Emperor Johannes IV. The grandson is capturing, the grandson of Johannes IV is capturing the other grandson of Johannes IV. When Guska Araya's forces surrounded Iyasu, Guska knelt on the ground and kissed Iyasu's feet before arresting him. He still had respect for him. Even his captor honored him, respected him, because Iyasu had been, however briefly, he was the designated emperor, even though some people, of course, the family saying he wasn't anointed as king, but he was seen as such, right? To some people. Because he carried Menelek's blood in him, rightfully so. And because in Ethiopian political culture, rank and lineage command respect even in defeat. Iyasu was taken into custody and he would spend the rest of his life under house arrest. And so he died a captive. Lij Iyasu's death was announced in 1935, shortly before the Battle of Mechu, one of the final battles of the Italian invasion. The circumstance of his death remains a complete mystery. The official story, all right, the official story is this, y'all. He died of natural causes. That's the story. He died of natural causes, but the timing is weird. The timing is strange. Just weeks before his death was announced, Italian planes were flying over and dropping leaflets and papers over Desi and Addis Ababa declaring Italy is here to remove the usurper from the throne and restore the rightful monarch Iyasu V to the throne of Solomon. So Italy was playing a little propaganda. Think about that. If Italy is siding all of a sudden, all of a sudden siding with Iyasu, an Ethiopian ruler. Something is wrong. So if Iyasu was alive, the Italians probably could use him as a puppet emperor. And so they can claim that they were liberating Ethiopia from Haile Selassie. And they could rally Iyasu supporters, Muslims, Northerners, and anyone resentful to Shiwan dominance. So the question some historians have asked is, did Haile Selassie order his cousin's death? So did Haile Selassie I order his Iyasu's death to prevent the Italians from using him? What do y'all think? You think Italy was trying to use Iyasu as a puppet leader? Because we all know good and well they weren't trying to free Ethiopia for Ethiopia. All right. But was Haile Selassie involved? I don't know. But we may never know for certain, but almost everyone who's in a position to know is actually gone. Unfortunately, the mystery still endures, right? But here's the tragedy. Here's the sad part. This is what we know. Iyasu was a visionary who saw multi-religious Ethiopia. He saw that. He saw Muslims and Christians united under one crown. That's what his vision was. But he was too radical for this time. He was too different. And the Orthodox Church wasn't ready. The nobility wasn't ready, right? And so Ethiopia wasn't ready. And so the interrupted transformation ended in exile, captivity, and death. So, but his vision would echo for decades to come. Decades later, when Ethiopia becomes a multi-ethnic federation, the Oromos, the Somalis, the Afar, and Amharas all claim Ethiopian identity. When religious pluralism became official state policy, Iyasu's dream finally materialized, but it was too late. So history, I don't think history was kind to this young man. For decades, he was portrayed as chaotic, reckless, a traitor to Christian Ethiopia. But the narrative is incomplete, right? Iyasu wasn't chaotic. He was just ahead of his time. He practiced religious tolerance in the era of religious warfare. He pursued pan-Horn diplomacy when Ethiopia was isolated. He imagined, say, a multi-faith future when identity was defined by confession. But here's the lesson, though. Modernization without consensus collapses. Iyasu moved faster than the institutions can adjust to. He didn't build coalitions before pushing reform. He didn't honor the old guard while empowering the new. Menelik did all those things, but he didn't partner transformation with tradition. Menelik succeeded because he brought nobility with him. Iyasu failed because he left the nobility behind. See what I'm saying? Iyasu moved faster than the system could forgive. All right. So, yeah. He says, of course, he was unfit to lead that country. Yeah. Okay. And yeah. Seriously, a Game of Thrones in Ethiopia. The Ethiopian Game of Thrones. Who would have thought it? The more we study Ethiopian history, the more we learn. I didn't know all this was happening. I'm finding out the same time you guys do, right? Well, maybe a couple of weeks before, but you know what I'm talking about. All right. So here we are. All right, we're now at Empress Zewditu, the necessary pause, right? And so it's very important for us to understand that Empress Zewditu played a very important role in modern Ethiopia. See what I'm saying? She was necessary, even though the situation around her coming into power was kind of different, but the aunt of Iyasu was important. Okay. And so she was very devout. Before we get to Empress Zewditu, really quick, let's get the review out. Last week, on the episode Modernization versus Westernization, which was very good, what Ethiopia got right, which great emperor at the turn of the 19th century was our focal point of discussion. I should say 20th century, but who was the emperor? A lot of people got it correct. Menelik II. If you got it correct, you got an A for the day. Very good. If you got it right. But if you got it wrong, you need to watch that video again. Right? You see. It says the war Mr. Rahabet supposed to take over, but he doesn't have the bloodline. Key figure at that time. Yeah, the bloodline, the connection to Menelik or Johannes IV was key. Yeah, it was key. Yeah, it was key. So let's get to it. Let's get down. Empress Zewditu. Okay, so when we turn the page from Lij Iyasu's fall, the empire enters into one of the most unusual eras in history. And this was the reign of Empress Zewditu. Zewditu was Menelik's daughter. She was deeply devout, rooted in Ethiopian Orthodox tradition. She was committed to preserving Ethiopia's identity. She fasted rigorously. She prayed constantly. She built churches. She honored the saints. To her, being Ethiopian meant being Orthodox. And the politicians and nobles like that. See what I'm saying? She was old school. Okay, to her, it was important to be Orthodox and connected to Ethiopian roots and tradition. And yet, here's the problem. Her reign becomes the launching pad for some of the boldest reforms in Ethiopian history. But the reforms weren't driven by her. It wasn't driven by her. They were driven by the force standing next to her, and that was Ras Tafari Mekanen, the future Haile Selassie. So there's like a dual structure, right? A dual system. Okay. And so what follows one of the most elegant political solutions in African history. Empress Zewditu reigns. She embodies the continuity. She sits on the throne, the orthodoxy, and shout out, thank you for the fam. Shout out to the fam, Isu. They gave a super chat. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Your support your support goes a long way to what we're doing. There's a lot of projects that's coming out. I had to go and say it. There's a lot of things that's coming out this year and next year that you guys are going to love. And for those who are supporting this channel and our efforts, yeah, you're going to see the results in a minute. But yeah, we're doing some big things. We're doing some great and wonderful things. And we'll talk more about it later. But thank you very much. And so on one side, we have the dual structure. Empress, she reigns physically on the throne, but then in the background, Ras Tafari governs. He embodies the future. He embodies reform, diplomacy, education, all those things, right? And so this dual structure prevented collapse. Modernization succeeds because tradition is not overthrown. Tradition is partnered. And so now you have transformation without annihilation. Zewditu held the throne so modernization could be built around it. She maintained orthodoxy. She preserved Solomonic continuity. She prevented civil war because the civil war could have happened because various families were involved. She prevented civil war by refusing to take sides in factional disputes. She was the roof under which reform was drafted. So she ruled, but again, the state was moved through Ras Tafari. This created that dual dynamic. She symbolized the tradition. He embodied modernization and outward-looking diplomacy. And rather than tearing the empire apart with tension and issues, it kind of brought some ma'at or some balance to what was going on. Right? So during Zewditu's reign, Ethiopia saw the first major diplomatic missions to Europe and the Middle East. Yeah, it was balanced for sure. Early administrative modernization, advances in communication infrastructure, gradual professionalization of government offices, new and legal bureaucratic frameworks, introduction to new culture and political ideas from abroad. She wasn't the architect, but she was the foundation to the 20th century modern Ethiopia. But there was some sorrow, okay, because she lost her husband. Okay, the loss of Ras Tafari. Okay, she was doing good. She was on her way up, and her husband passes away. And so she was married to Ras Tafari, who administered the province of Begimder. Okay, Tafari was Empress Zewditu's nephew. Okay, this is Empress Zewditu's nephew, which made the marriage part of Zewditu's broader strategy of consolidating Shiwan power. Remember earlier when, as Iyasu ascended the throne, Zewditu was strategizing and moving pieces around, and he was part of that. He was part of that piece. He saw, and so what happened is he saw, but as Ras Tafari's influence grew, Gusa's Wele became jealous. According to the story, according to some stories, he saw power slipping away. He saw his wife deferring more to Ras Tafari than to him. He saw his own governorship becoming irrelevant. So in 1930, he rebels. He marches on Addis Ababa with his army. Mind you, his wife is the reigning empress right now. He marches on Addis Ababa with his army. He was defeated and then killed in battle. So think about it. Think about Empress Zewditu's position. She's moving into the modern era. She's making positive changes, and her husband crashes out. Bro, it's like, don't you see what I'm trying to do right now? And you and your feelings? But, the thing is, everybody wanted power. And he felt that his influence politically and probably from the marriage side was going away. So her husband rebels against her own region. So she got to choose: support her husband and plunge Ethiopia in a civil war, or support Ras Tafari and lose her marriage. She chose Ethiopia. She supported Tafari. Her husband dies on the battlefield, and the cost was personal devastation. Okay, yeah. So none of Zewditu's children survived adulthood. So she has no heirs. She has no survivors, right? And the circumstances surrounding her own death in 1930 is another issue. We have Iyasu's death that's questionable, and now we have Zewditu's. The official story, of course, is natural causes again. but we got to question that though. But she died weeks after her husband's rebellion was crushed. She died just as Ras Tafari was ready to claim full imperial power. Was she assassinated? What do y'all think? Was Zewditu assassinated? Did she die, or did she die of grief after her husband's death? What do y'all think? Did she die of a broken heart? Did Tafari arrange her removal? We don't know. We don't know. But what we do know is by the time she passed, the empire was ready for the next phase, for the next level. Tafari had built the infrastructure. He had secured international recognition. He modernized bureaucracy. He positioned Ethiopia on the world stage. All that remained was for him to take the crown. That's the only thing that was left. And Zewditu was in power. But she was a stabilizing force in an unstable time. History, I think, often overlooks her because of Ras Tafari, which is, that happens sometimes. Her name doesn't ring as loudly as Menelik II, okay, or Haile Selassie. But here's what's the important thing to understand. Ethiopia could not have moved into the era of Haile Selassie without the transitional stability Zewditu provided. She held the throne so modernization could be built around it. She maintained Orthodox legitimacy when the church was suspicious of reform. She preserved Solomonic continuity when factionalism threatened to tear the empire apart, even when her husband was trying to do something different. She prevented civil war by refusing to choose sides. She chose Ethiopia and not the different nobles or different factions. She was the bridge between Iyasu's interrupted transformation and Haile Selassie's consolidation. And that role, even though it was quiet, it was transitional and transformational. And it was critical. But here's the thing. If you want to discover more about the Forgotten Queen of Ethiopia, I got that video also. We talked about Zewditu before, but man, this is amazing. But now let's talk about a little bit about Ras Tafari. Let's talk a little bit about Ras Tafari. Oh, the fam is chatting. The fam is in the chat. His Imperial Majesty was too smart for that time, and some people think she was killed by His Imperial Majesty. So did the Lion of the tribe of Judah get his hands dirty? Interesting. And the thing is, we try to sanitize some of our leaders, just like we would sanitize the reputation of Martin Luther King and many others. We try to whitewash it or make it purer than it's supposed to be. Sometimes these kings and rulers had to get down. And sometimes when they had to get down, they got dirty. So, but let me know. Y'all, we're all learning. And so, like, comment, dislike, disagree, let me know. But Ras Tafari, the apprentice, learning governance from inside the system. That was how he was able to connect with the nobility, to understand Ethiopian politics. He had to learn this. Throughout Zewditu's reign, Ras Tafari Mekanen consolidated power carefully. He didn't seize power, right? He didn't stage a coup like many others. He didn't try to overthrow tradition, because that's what has happened in the last 30 years or so. Instead, he learned governance from inside the system. So, coming up, rising amongst the ranks, he was regent, ruling Zewditu in Zewditu's name. He was heir to the throne, okay, by bloodline, okay. He was a foreign minister conducting diplomacy. He was a modernizer, so he pushed reforms. And he did all of this without overtly threatening Zewditu's authority at the time. He honored her publicly. He consulted her on major decisions. He positioned himself as her loyal servant, but everyone knew the real power was not on the throne, it was behind it. And the real power was Ras Tafari. So there was some bureaucratic reforms. Tafari understood something Iyasu didn't, his cousin didn't understand. You can't modernize a state without modernizing its institutions. Menelik started that vision. They had to finish it. They had to take it to the next level. So he focused on bureaucratic reforms and professionalizing civil service, creating standardized administrative procedures, establishing new ministries like finance ministry, justice, foreign affairs. Yes, Menelik did it in the late 1800s. Now, this is the 1930s. They gotta make some updates. They gotta upgrade this thing. Training a new generation of educated administrators, bringing in foreign advisors without yielding to them. Bringing in foreign advisors, Belgian, Swiss, and British, to help build modern systems. This work was not as glamorous as sitting on the throne, but it was very foundational. It didn't produce dramatic headlines and in the newspapers on news feed, but by the time Tafari became emperor, Ethiopia had the institutional capacity to implement his vision. Now he has international exposure. In 1923, Ethiopia joined the League of Nations, a bold step for a non-colonized African nation, non-colonized African empire. Okay, it basically signaled his legitimacy. Ethiopia is recognized as a sovereign state. It showed his sovereignty. Okay, Ethiopia speaks for itself on the world stage, and it allowed them to participate in global decision making. Ethiopia was not a colony, and it was not colonized because a colonized country or a nation could not join the League of Nations. For those who like to say Ethiopia was colonized and was under imperialism and in during this time, no. He also visited London, meeting with King George V. He went to Paris, engaging with French leaders. He went to Rome, ironically meeting Mussolini, who would later invade a decade later. But he returned with international recognition, modern ideas, technical advisors, military training, and a vision of what Ethiopia could be. Yeah, Ras Tafari, he spoke 3 languages fluently at the age of 16. The fam say he spoke Amharic, French, and English. So he was able to have a conversation with anybody, anywhere. Yeah. And not only that, fam, he was a patient strategist. Tafari's genius, he was patient. He was thinking about the long game. He didn't rush. He didn't force anything. He didn't alienate anybody. He built coalitions. He built networks. He honored tradition while pushing reform. That's the one thing I love about a lot of our Ethiopian leaders. They honored tradition. They honored the system. They honored what was happening. But at the same time, they made some changes as they went ahead. Sometimes the issue is some leaders, they would knock things down just to knock things down. Okay? But no, Ras Tafari, he partnered with the church while modernizing the state. He learned from Iyasu's failure. Modernization without consensus collapses. So Tafari built consensus year by year, reform by reform. Okay, alliance by alliance. So by 1913, when Zewditu passes, ultimately she dies. Tafari was crowned officially Emperor Haile Selassie I. But at that point, he had the support of the nobility, the blessing of the church, recognition of foreign powers, institutional capacity of foreign, he had basically, let me slow down, the institutional capacity to govern effectively. He basically did what his cousin couldn't do. He had transformed Ethiopia without annihilating tradition. Yeah. And yeah, he had the fam said he had prepared him for kingship. Kudos to his dad, his father. Yeah. Yeah. And so get this. There was some religious tension, political chaos, and the birth of a modern Ethiopia. What we learned during this period, from Iyasu's interrupted transformation, from Zewditu stabilizing pause, from Tafari's patient rise, we learned this: change is inevitable, but the speed of change determines whether it succeeds or collapses. Iyasu saw the future multi-religious pan-horn Ethiopia, but he moved too fast. He was going too fast. He didn't build coalitions. He didn't network. He didn't honor the old tradition, the old ways, while building the new. That caused some problems. And so the system rejected him. Zewditu didn't push change, but she held the throne so change could happen around her. She maintained legitimacy. She prevented the collapse. She gave the empire time to breathe, right? She gave the empire time to breathe. Tafari learned from both of them, from his cousin and Zewditu. He moved forward, but not so fast that he would lose the nobility's support. He modernized, but not so radically that he lose the church. He built the future, but he did it with partnership with the past, right? He had to make that happen. So transformation without annihilation was important. Modernization with consensus, change that honors continuity. So by the late 1920s, Ethiopia has survived something remarkable. Okay, it survived the uncrowned emperor who moved too fast, a coup disguised as salvation, a church guarding identity, nobility guarding privilege, a world closing in on African sovereignty. Ethiopia survives because it slowed down to pause and to pause, and that pause has a name, the Empress Zewditu, right? And so, in standing beside her patiently and quietly was Ras Tafari Mekanen. Iyasu taught him what happens when vision outruns coalition. Zewditu taught him what legitimacy looks like when power waits. So by the time Tafari was ready, he understands something none of his predecessors fully mastered. Modern power is not just infrastructure, it's symbolism, it's law, it's ritual, and timing. But we'll discuss that another time. We'll discuss that next time. Because in 1930, Tafari would no longer rule beside the throne. He becomes the throne. In 1930, Haile Selassie took the crown of Ethiopia when Ethiopia was ready, but not to conquer, but as a legal architect, a ritual master, a man who understands that in Ethiopia, legitimacy is political technology. Ready for the schools, hospitals, ready for internal diplomacy, ready for modern infrastructure, ready to face the coming storm because the Italians were waiting and watching, and it was ready to invade in 1935. So in part 3, that's coming up next week. We'll have a conversation. Okay, we'll talk about Haile Selassie and the hidden code of modern power, legitimacy, law, and spiritual policies of modernization. That's part 3. So for now, we'll, we got to think about Ethiopia had been tested, but it didn't fail. That decision could be made in the only decisions that could be made like that was through the fires of Italian invasion. But we'll talk about that next week. So, but yeah, if you want to learn more about Ethiopian Christian Kemet, like and subscribe, fam. I really appreciate you guys. So today we talked about Pillar 1, Ethiopia, the source of sanctuary, and for some books, the history of modern Ethiopia, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. The Orthodox Church of Ethiopia. A History by John Benz. The affiliate links are in the description. If you ever, a lot of people are asking, where do I get these books, or where can I find them? I got the affiliate links in the description. As an Amazon affiliate, I earn from qualifying purchases at no additional cost to you. Get a book, okay? All right, check it out. Your Highness IV of Ethiopia, a political biography by Haile Selassie. Okay, check it out. Get that. The Life and Times of Menelik II by so get that book also. And we're almost done. We're almost done with our book. Okay, The Ethiopian A History by Richard Pankhurst. If you want a study guide, I have a free study guide. If you want a free study guide, like and comment Ethiopia, and we'll get it for you. That study guide covers almost everything we've discussed so far, and what we'll be discussing in the future. So if you want a study guide, like and comment Ethiopia, and we got you. Okay, get ready. The Crusades and Jihad in East Africa, religious conflicts and their impact by yours truly. We got a revised edition coming soon. That's coming out this summer. The Crusades and Jihad in East Africa, untold history of faith, resistance, and power. Yeah, when people talk about the Crusades, they always talk about the Muslims versus the Christians, or the Arabs versus the Europeans. Africa was also involved. We'll talk about that. So, but I gotta check roll. Shout out to our Ujumbe members, Sister Abina Scott, Brother Mo. Shout out to Brother Isu. And join the membership. The members are getting new videos unreleased, and they're able to help me with the content, give me ideas as far as what we're going to discuss next. Join the membership because membership has its privileges. I got to check roll. I got to do it. Shout out to David. Okay. Shout out to David. Tef Tech. Okay. Shout out to Tef Tech. Gizal Ifa. Zion Production. Shout out to Zion Production. Roman Sharif, Pan-African Bookstore. I'll be hanging out at Pan-African Bookstore really soon. Nubian. Dari Melish. Gita. Shout out to the fam. Shout out to Baba Kaba, Noni Cafe, Library Without Borders, Miss Blue, Brother Ferguson, Sister Kiara, Zep Tepi Slim, Solani Music, and the illustrious Ujumbe alumni. If I did not call your name and you're present, type here in the comment. But I got a special shout out. I got a special shout out to check this out, y'all. We are global. We are worldwide. Shout out to the fam in Germany, Frankfurt am Main, Hesse, Council Bluff, Iowa. Somebody in Iowa is listening to us, right? Shout out to the fam in Tempe, Arizona, Sussex Inlet, New South Wales. All right. Shout out to the fam in Texas. You know how it goes. Shout out to the fam in Brazil. Much love to the fam in Ethiopia, Egypt, Republic of Lithuania. All right. Much love to the global fam. I really appreciate you guys out there, wherever you are. I really appreciate it. All right. So, next week, we're going to deal with Haile Selassie, his rise to power. All right. And so, we talked about after Menelik, we talked about Lij Iyasu, the breaking point, fall and flight, erasure, Empress Zewditu, dual power, and the making of Haile Selassie. So, this is the King Cam Ujumbe podcast, and Ujumbe means message. And if there are no other questions, we just talked about a lot of wonderful things, but we got more to talk about because today we talked about religion, religious tension, political chaos, and the birth of modern Ethiopia. Next week we got the rise of Haile Selassie. Shout out to the family. Just said 5 videos. Thank you, teacher. I really appreciate it. Oh, speaking of that, online courses is loading. Yeah, we're working on online courses, book club, and a lot of wonderful things. So it's about to get big. All right. Yeah, FAFSA plan to fail. Yeah, fail to plan, you plan to fail. Yeah, you got to do it. All right. So yeah, we got a lot of wonderful things. Check out the books. The affiliate links in the description. And so this is about to be great. We got courses coming up. We got 2. One, decoding the symbols of ancient Kemet. We're going to break that down. And the Crusades of Jihad, we're going to break that down. So, but yeah, if there are no other questions, this is the King Cam Ujumbe podcast. And thank you for coming. And see you next time.